Hi folks, so this video will be based upon why did God put this plague on us, or this war on us? Why did God do this, do that, do this, do that? Well, the answer is he didn't do it at all. It wasn't God. And far too often we have this situation where we love to blame God for each and every little thing that happens and goes wrong. We love to blame God. Yeah. During the time of the plague, of course, people were saying, why did God bring this plague on us? Because they believe that something so destructive, it must be God. When it was always, in fact, man or woman. Either way, people that brought that plague upon themselves by not dealing with the rats. Well, that's the point. If you have vermin in your city, bring disease and what else, then yes, it spreads nicely through such things, and And then, of course, how would they dispose of the bodies of the people that died of the plague? Would it have been in a healthy way? Yeah. And then the wars, again, why would God bring this world war on us? Why would God bring the Second World War on us? Why would God bring the Battle of Hastings on us, or any other battle? That people blame God for. Well, the reality is, most wars are about greed. Not God's greed. My greed. And so, all these things we bring on ourselves. We always do. And as I say, this is why right now the church will not take responsibility, because all through time people give up responsibility and blame God. That's why so many people don't believe in God, because all the time, anything marvellous that happens is God. Anything terrible that happens is God. God brought that upon us. Did he? No. No. It's just the way that people choose to recognise things. And they can't recognise that there's a possibility that we, mankind, have allowed these terrible things to happen. And they're down to us. Well, yeah. Of course. Something that struck me today that was quite an interesting thing as well. Sin. Yeah. Well, because the reason why that crossed my mind is I was thinking about the point of how we judge, and what created sin was the tree of knowledge of good and evil. So therefore, was sin real? Or was it always about guilt? Because the Word of God says that sin cannot get into heaven. But is that sin, or is that one's own guilt? Is that the point that if one feels that they're dirty, they would never approach God? They could never have a relationship with God because they feel they're dirty. Whether they're dirty or not, it doesn't matter. If because of this thing called sin, people feel dirty, which means they don't go to God, which means that they want this understanding that only the holiest of holy people can come before God, right? When the reality all along well, because if God doesn't judge according to the knowledge of good and evil, which I don't believe he does, then it was just a thought. I can't say there's something to it as of yet. But so many of the things that I believe were the case have been blown apart. By recent truths that make absolute sense. So, that thing about sin, well, okay. Put it this way. If the truth has been since Yeshua was crucified, that it's possible for every single human being to approach God in boldness and approach the throne room in boldness, but pretty much nobody does, because that understanding hasn't been out there. Well then, is it possible that there are other understandings? Other things that we don't have right now? Don't know. I think it is. I think it certainly is possible that there are a lot of things that we believe and have believed that are absolutely fundamental that are just not true in any way, shape or form. A lot of things. Yeah. Well, as I said, I mean, the reality is God pointing out about evil because he sees evil or because we see evil? Because if he's pointing out because we see evil, then sin could be a concept and creation of people of God, going right the way back to Adam and Eve. That whole point of that's a tree, don't touch that tree. And because I did wrong, the guilt for that. And now they're hiding from God. Because when they ate from the tree, they hid from God. They knew that they were naked. Right? But not just that. They didn't just cover themselves up, they hid from God. Because they knew that they weren't worthy. Before then, they were worthy, but now they've done this, they're not worthy anymore. And so, yeah. Did they lose everything because of that? Because we know that we're people. We know, as I say, basically, the world wants to take strong people and make them weak. And they figured out ways of doing that. Of taking someone who's strong and completely crushing them. So is it possible that what Adam and Eve did took them from strong and from peace and worthy to sin and unworthy? Don't know. As I say, this whole point of, well, because everything, as I say, Matthew 7, it was only very, very recently I understood Matthew 7, the first few verses. About that, I mean, certainly the first verse, well, the first few verses basically says, if you don't judge, then you won't be judged. See, the problem is people focus on it being saying that how you judge is how you'll be judged, and the measure you use will be measured upon you. But if you don't judge and you don't measure, there can't be a measure and you can't be judged. Right? So the problem is the message says that, but the church has focused on it from a completely how you judge is how you be judged. They focused on it from that point, rather than from the point of saying, well, okay, that does also say that if you do not judge, you will not be judged. So, okay, how do we get to the point where we don't judge? Yeah, that was a journey that God took me on in understanding that. And ever since then, everything was up for questioning. Everything. Absolutely everything. And everything must be. Everything must be up for questioning. Well, because when you see a church the way it is now, then you say, if they're going by the word of God, which they say they are, then there's something fundamentally wrong with the word of God. Right? There must be, because if they're going by the word of God and they're doing things completely in the world's way, basically the devil's way, then there must be something wrong with the word of God for them to be on that path if they're obeying the word of God, right? Or being led by it. Well, the point of it is they're not really. They're not. So it's something I saw the other day, which has always blown my mind. Was that point where Yeshua said, where two or more are gathered and agree on one thing, that I shall do. Right? Well, so that speaks massively into so much of what the church has been doing wrong over the years. Yeah, praying for people, healing. The reason why healing hasn't worked is because they've not been agreeing on one thing. The reason why so many things that I've spoken about, you go to church and you go to these prayer meetings and you've got some clever sod who thinks that they're going to be super spiritual, and they pray this prayer that lasts for about 5 minutes. How can you possibly agree with every single thing that person said? Well, the answer is you can't. Because you can't remember every single thing the person has said. They're praying out loud, and they're going on and on and on and on and on. And they think that that's being super spiritual. Because they can continue praying out loud for quite a while. And they sound passionate, so it sounds as if they're being led by God. But they can't be being led by God if they're doing things that goes against the word of God. Right? If they're praying massive prayers like that, and it's impossible to therefore agree with what they've said, then it wasn't God leading them. You know that without there's no problem at all. That's not judging. You know that. If it's impossible for you to agree with every single word that person has said because you can't remember, then it wasn't God leading that person. God is not going to lead people into a situation of confusion. That's why, any church that does tongues without interpretation, that's demonic. It's demonic. Simple as that. The word of God doesn't say that there should be interpretation. It says there has to be interpretation. There should be no word of tongues unless you know that God is going to provide the interpretation. So unless God is pushing you to do that, shut your mouth. Right? Keep tongues quiet between you and God. Because utterances in churches create confusion, and that's of the devil, that's not of God. But you see it in churches. They do it. I was in the African church, and while they're having their little prayer meeting after the service, they're all speaking in tongues. No interpretation. Of course, anyone who was at the service can hear this. So therefore, it's not God doing that. I'm not going to do it on here. I've never done tongues on one of my videos. Unless I know that someone's going to come and provide an interpretation for that word. I'm not going to do that. No. Anyway, it's getting long now, so it's getting towards belly rise time. Took doggies out for good walkies around these woods. We went around once. Then I had to do a bit of sanding on the car, preparing it for the next paint job. Well, because you've got to put the lacquer on after the paint. That gives it the shine and stuff like that. I bought lacquer with it from the same company, and the lacquer just makes it go dull and not smooth and patchy. It sort of squirts, but most of it turns into mist, and it just blows all over the car rather than on the bit you're trying to actually squirt it onto. So I've had to sand all that off, or I've bought some cutting polish stuff that's a bit stronger than T-cut, and I thought that would do the job, and it hasn't. So it's like, okay, that's not good. But I'm going to do some more of that tomorrow, and hopefully I can get that working and it will do a better job. So in the end, we shall see what happens with regards to all of that. So I've ordered some new paint, so the paint will come soon. I've ordered lacquer from another company now. So a more expensive version, so hopefully that will actually do the job properly, rather than being dozy and turning into a mist and going blinking everywhere rather than where you want it. And patches. Yeah, not good. So there you go. We shall see what happens. So yeah, I took them for a walk, did a bit of the car, and then took them for another walk around. So they are nicely knackered, and so they will sleep well tonight. I shall give them their food in a minute. So there you go. You take care. God bless. I'll speak to you soon. Yeah. Anyway, yeah. More will come with regards to the musings and the issue of the concept of sin and all of that. Yeah. If it's of any worth, then more will come. Yeah. It may just be a case of speak about it in this video and never speak about it again. It may be a case of speak about it and then maybe someone else will get something from that and they'll take it on to the next point. We shall see. You take care. God bless. I'll speak to you soon.